Shalom, everyone. My name is Ronette Brooks, and I'm coming to you live today from snowy Clover, South Carolina, where we have had almost a foot of snow. This was an invite to come to the table and talk to the light of the world live. I wanted to do so. Of course, that's an honor for me, but I wanted to tell you guys about myself. There's been people have reached out and kind of wanted to hear my why for being here, and a lot of people have said in the comments, what business of this is yours, and I wanted to just explain a little bit about how I got here. I grew up in the South, and I remember the first time that I actually realized there was a problem, like a race problem. I was 10 or 11 years old, and I saw a picture in a magazine, and it was a picture from the civil rights marches in Alabama. And I think it was probably about a 10-year anniversary. And it was a woman, and I don't know, you guys picture how they marched. The Black people in that time, when they marched, they wore their Sunday best, and it was this woman and her children in their Sunday best clothes, and they were being hosed down by a firefighter. And I was stunned. And that was kind of one of the first things that really stuck out. And growing up, I just realized that it always felt like I missed out on like the rose-colored glasses that everybody else in my family and around me got. Like everybody thought that life was good and everything was fine, and I kept seeing so much injustice and oppression and just issues in the world around me. And so, life goes on. I grow up. I went to a probably 50-50 high school, and never had really any problems, any race problems of my own. And then one day at about 20 years old, my brother, Kevin, was a football player, and his best friend was the tallest, blackest, largest football player on the team. His name was Curtis Campbell. And Kevin and Curtis were great friends, and Curtis became a part of the family. He knew where the hideaway key was, and he came to our house. And so one day he got there and nobody was there, and he let himself in, and my grandmother called, and he answered the phone. And so my brother's friend said, hello, Van's residence. That's how we had to answer the phone. And my grandmother was like, is Kevin there? And she really was calling for my mom, but because Curtis had answered the phone, she has to speak to my brother, because I guess she didn't want to ask Curtis to speak to my mother. I don't know. But anyway, he said, no, ma'am. She went through the whole family to verify that he was there by himself. And so the next day, a conversation had to be had with my mother and her mother, and I got to hear part of the conversation. And I think I was about 20, and I heard my grandmother, who is she is a quarter Blackfoot, a quarter Cherokee, and half white. She was a sharecropper, picked cotton. Her mother died in the cotton field during childbirth. Is how the story goes. And she was real dirt poor, and just a brutal racist. And I didn't really know this. You don't know these things about your people. Well, we live so divided. The races are so divided till you just don't know until it comes up. And so anyway, my mother and my grandmother were having a conversation about this young man being at our house. And my grandmother said, does he sleep on the sheets? And I remember just being stunned. Like, what did she just say? What does she mean? I just couldn't figure out the conversation. And so at about that point, I really had a break with my family, kind of always been the black sheep. I went into teaching. I worked with a lot of impoverished inner city, not big inner city. There's no real big inner city where I was in Lexington District 2, but I ended up teaching and doing a lot of tutoring and working with students. I ended up getting a degree in Spanish. And so then I worked with a lot of Spanish-speaking minorities, and have just always been burdened by our history, our current situation, cop killings. I mean, I can't seem to escape it. I can't take a rest from it. I feel like so many people close their eyes and turn their heads till I just kind of have to stay tuned in all the time. And you know, Black Panthers hate me. They say it's white guilt and yada yada. I don't know. I don't understand that. All I know is I'm a human being. And when you see somebody get shot because of a traffic, you know, a traffic stop turns into a cop shooting across a woman at her husband, you know, I don't know how you, I don't know. Guilt is not a is not a feeling that I would use to describe what I go through when I see those things. Rage and um, just a level of I don't understand. So, you know, I have been just increasingly aware and just constantly, and of course, now with the algorithm, I mean, Facebook's got me figured out, all my social media's got me figured out. They think I'm Black. I get all Black ads on my Facebook, and I get all of the news about the, you know, continual onslaught of injustice and police oppression, and, you know, and just follow them. I can't let it go. So anyway, long before I knew who the Chosen were, I have always had a, a something in the pit of my stomach, in my spirit, really. Like when I learned that there were slaves that they somehow got free, ran a ship above onto an island, got off of the island, and walked themselves into the water to drown themselves, rather than to continue in the conditions that they were being chained in. You know, it's like I can see them, and it just has always been on my spirit. I really feel like possibly I was being prepared to know this truth even then. I don't know. I am a firstborn. I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but I just never saw things like my people. You know, I have a beautiful sister. She doesn't have any racism in her body that she knows of. She doesn't understand privilege. She doesn't understand entitlement. She doesn't understand that, you know, her women that sit with her in her prayer group have to, you know, the women of color have to worry about their sons different than she has to worry about her sons. She doesn't know that. You know, she's got Black people in her life, but they just pray together and talk about the word. They don't really talk about anything real. And I guess having children of a mixed race, I had to experience some of that. So that might have something to do with it. But um, just never, even before I knew who the Chosen were, and it's, I have a degree in math, which is a science, and I spent part of my life trying to not believe in God. There was so much injustice, 3,000 abortions a day, you know, to learn that abortion clinics started out in predominantly Black neighborhoods, and they actually had a sign out front that said more of the fit, less of the unfit. They were so bold in their plan to try and promote the slaughter of minority babies. You know, those kinds of things, and they just always stuck. But I never imagined that this was the light of the world. And, you know, I knew that I was not a Jew. And my mother told me something that stuck with me so hard. My mother she loved white Jesus with all of her heart. She loved the Lord. She prayed for his will. And she taught me that he had a chosen people, and that when the chosen people figured out who they were, that they would be the light of the world and that the land would be healed. I do not subscribe to any healing of this land. I know what's coming. I know that destruction is coming. I know that judgment is coming. And I pray for judgment, because without justice, we cannot have a creator. We can't have a God. We can't have the Most High. The Most High is of order and is of justice. So there must be justice. And I think about, I know I'm kind of jumping all around, but I think about like Emmett Till and, you know, his mom. How many prayers did she scream out in agony? How much palal, how much begging from her gut and her heart did she do to God for justice? And, you know, all the other moms from there, you know, and you know, all the way up to Sonia Massey's mom. You know, there was no justice for Sonia Massey this week. Her killer shot her in the face. I'm not supposed to say those kinds of things. She was unalived, and sorry about that. Um, you know, he was found not guilty of first degree murder. So he did get sentenced to 20 years for second-degree murder. So that is an improvement, but is that justice? No, that's not justice. And I've talked to this group on this platform about that before. But anyway, as a teacher, working with minority students and watching minority students come in the door and literally have to trip over the expectations that everybody holds for them. The expectations are so low, and these students have to come in and they have to rise above what anybody expects of them. And that was something that was always really hard for me. I taught for about 14 years. But in 2007, I became increasingly aware that the Christian church could not possibly be of God. You know, when you learn that the Southern Baptist Foundation was founded by all slave owners, you know, that can't be of God. When you learn that churches in the South held services with Black, broken, hungry bodies in chains in the basement, like there's no way that is of God. You know, it can't be lukewarm. It's either got to be right or it's not of God. And so, you know, that when you learn that the slave Bible was invented, that Christianity allowed the taking out of the majority of the word and just leaving in the way that slaves are supposed to behave, you know, that just can't be of God. So I took my children out of the Christian church in 2007, and they were preteens. And I started studying in the Word with a group of other just truth seekers, you know, and we were all, you know, there were no people of color in the church or when I came out in the group. But I think we thought that the Jewish people were the chosen still, but that they didn't have the Messiah, and that we had been grafted in. But in this time, digging into the Word, praying for truth, praying for His will, I was able to find the seventh-day Sabbath and leave the Sunday Sabbath alone. I was able to, he didn't have blue eyes. He was a dark man. And that I didn't even miss a beat for that. That didn't bother me in the slightest, other than I felt like I had been lied to. You know, here's this righteous, precious life that has sacrificed everything for my sins, is what I thought, and knew every hair on my head was what I was taught. And I don't even know him. I don't know when his birthday is. I don't, and come find out he didn't even celebrate birthdays. And come to find out he went to, you know, he read the word on the Sabbath, which on the seventh-day Sabbath, you know, and he didn't have a New Testament, which was the only thing that, you know, Christians like to read out of, seems like. You know, the Messiah only had the Torah scroll, the Torah and the prophets. So just coming out with some anger, feeling a little, you know, like I've been lied to, and like I had everything wrong, and like I had lied to my kids, and I taught my children to do pagan stuff. And it's funny too, because those pagan times of Christianity and Easter, I mean, of Christmas and Easter, are like some of the most religious times in the Christian doctrine. You know, this is when people act the most Christ-like, and they love God the most, and they focus on God the most. And it's just so wrong, because it's really about paganism. That whole, the date and everything is just, it's just so mixing God in with things that are not of God. So it's kind of ironic. But anyway, you know, brought my kids out of Christmas, and toyed with Hanukkah a little bit, you know, learned about the Maccabees, and saw in the New Testament where the Messiah was at Solomon's porch in town for the Feast of Lights. And so use that as an excuse to kind of placate the kids. You know, I took Christmas, but here's Hanukkah. And that was really the only holiday that we did. I never really got, we made attempts at Passover, and they made some attempts at Sukkot, but I didn't get to participate in those things. My mother got dementia and I had to move away. But anyway, I feel like I took about 11 years to undo Christianity. So I came out of the church in 2007, and it took about 11 years to just really get into the practice. And I was reading the Torah portions, and I had a lot of revelation, and I loved the word, and I loved I called him Adonai at that time. Um, and so one day I just was so burdened. I was going through some empty nest stuff, and I was just like, something's missing. There's something I don't know. I need the truth. And I had really been in prayer for the truth, and was doing some fasting and praying, and I had the habit of running. Of course, it wasn't really running; it was jogging, slow jog, my 12-minute mile that I was so proud of. But I would run 3 days a week across a dam. It was a 5K there and back. And I went one morning. It was a Wednesday morning, I think, and it was the end of October 2019. And I went across the bridge, and I was meditating on God, as I do sometimes in the morning when the sun's coming up and you're running, and music is in your ear. And when I got back in the car, I was just it was not anything earth shattering. It was just a knowledge. I had a knowledge in my head that Judah was here, and that Judah was the descendants of the survivors of the slave trade. I was not dating a black man. I wasn't married to a black man. I wasn't, I had black friends at this time. I had everybody in my life since I was 28 years old has been minorities, but my I just didn't. It wasn't in me. I don't think. I don't know if I studied Deuteronomy extra hard and it just hit, or if the Most High just answered my prayers. I honestly don't know, but I know that I came off of that bridge at the end of October in 2019, and I knew the truth. Somebody on the very first video that we did, and it's got 700 comments in it, I went through to try to figure out who it was, but somebody was also talking about this. And this is one of the things that I said, if I ever get a chance to just do a live with the light of the world, this is something I want to ask you guys. How many people woke up in 2019? Because I didn't think about, 1619 to 2019 was the end of 400 years. I didn't know anything about all that. That was not even anywhere in my mind. But since I've been in this truth and I've started talking about it, 2019, a lot of people, shout out to Christopher Spears and his Israelite self. And, he's August of 2019. And several people have told me the same thing. But a guy posted on one of the videos his experience, and it was my exact experience. He was like, it was a calm, oh, Judah's the light of the world, they're here, they're the in my mind the way it was blacks or Judah. And it was just a knowledge, and it was like it was something that I had already always known, but I was very aware that it was new. It was unlike anything I've ever been through. But anyway, shortly after that, I met an Israelite, and by Israelite, I mean a black man from the South. And he, so there you go. There's another one, Anointed with Love 2045. She woke up in 2019 too. I got a feeling that that's going to be a common thread. I've seen it already, and I think that's really cool. I have met people that have been in the truth since 2010, 2000. Of course, people have been at this forever. I saw a Facebook post that was an old newspaper from like the late 1800s, where they were trying to gather the lost sheep. So, but I mean, as far as like a majority of the people that are that seem to be, getting the word now, 2019 seems to be a popular year. But I would really like to shout out, there was a guy that posted that in 2019 he just woke up one day and had the knowledge, and I had the same experience. So you can't make this stuff up. But anyway, I met the Israelite that knew who he was. He didn't read the Torah very much, but he knew the word. Like, he showed me, about the eating pork, hiding behind the trees, eating pork. And he showed me about Deuteronomy 28, and he showed me about the ships, and it just all came to life. I'm like, how did I ever miss it? It's right here. And I was just painfully aware that, even though I've always been in tune to atrocities all over the world, and so mass graves and the Holocaust, and things have happened that were tragic, but nobody feels Deuteronomy 28 like the survivors of the transatlantic slave trade. And it's right there in black and white. And so I I went through a real painful separation. I had to give up my Messiah. I had to understand that he doesn't know every hair on my head. And I do still consider myself a child of the Most High. I just don't consider myself a firstborn or the apple of his eye. I have found, I mean, I've had people tell me that I'm Nephilim. I've had people tell me that I'm not from Adam and Eve. I'm not even from Abraham or Adam and Eve. And I just, I know what spirit is in me, and I know that I am a child of the Most High. And so when people say on the video, several people, I won't mention any names, but and this is not to try to put anybody on the spot, but people say, "So what business is this of yours?" You're the light of the world. You're the light of the world. I'm very clear on the assignment. You guys are going to wake up, realize who you are, learn what it is to be righteous, and you're going to live righteous lives, and you're going to shine on the rest of us, and we're going to bless you and bring sacrifices. And I'm just very clear on the picture. And um, it's the only thing that matters to me. Like, I have separated from everybody over this. And I've met two Gentiles that are striving to live righteous lives in 7 years. And both of them have come in my pathway because of the videos. I met Christopher that I mentioned because of the videos, and he sent a Gentile to me, and because he didn't deal with Gentiles very much. And so when he sends me a Gentile, I know that it's somebody that's really striving for righteousness. But like I said, there's only been two. We've started a little messenger group, and I don't know what's going to happen. But people say, tell your people. Well, I've been talking to my people my whole life. I've been talking about my people are MAGA. I don't even, I had a conversation with my brother, and I just had to tell him, I love you, but we live in two different realities, and I can't stomach your reality. And you're going to have to let me go and live my reality. Like, I know you're never going to see where I'm at. For one, I have children that are interracial and in my opinion, in danger in the streets right now. My son has about 140 friends that are missing from ICE. So I just have, I have this idea that if we're not talking about prophecy or Torah, then we're wasting our time. And that's where I'm at, and that's how I feel. And so this has been, like, I know that this has benefited me way more than it will ever benefit Israel. This is not about me. And it all kind of started. I got back into the word. I walked away from the word for a while, not because I was brokenhearted. I was just depressed. I didn't know what to do with all of it. And I have probably, oh my goodness, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 Bibles, different Bibles and books that I study, and Josephus and all kinds of things that I love. And I pulled them out in October, and in my first, on a Monday, it was either the first Monday of, I think it was the first Monday of November, and the big, an Israelite saw me posting on something. I was defending IUIC of all people, and an Israelite saw me doing this and reached out to me and became aware that I didn't think I had salvation. And so anyway, we walked through the Word, and I found Isaiah 56, and I found Jeremiah 16 and 19 because of JJ. Shout out to JJ. Israelite recently got married. Congratulations. He showed me where I'm screaming, where my people are saying, we have, my ancestors have profited lies, and it's all been for naught. And, that's what I've been screaming since 2007, before I even knew who the chosen were, about the church. When I first came out of the church, I thought the church just needed to get straight. I thought the church was going to be okay, but they just got some stuff wrong. And now I know that the church is a political power doing exactly what it was designed to do. The Christian church was designed by a Roman emperor who was a pagan worshiper. And the Christian church has always done exactly what it was designed to do. And, that makes me cut off from my family. My family loves Christ, and they love the church. And so, I'm getting lost in my thoughts because I've just got so much. I would love to just sit around and have coffee and talk with you guys forever. One of the things that I did want to talk about, and I wrapped my head because I knew I wanted to read a little bit of the word. One of the things that's very prominent in the comments is that a lot of people seem to think that white people know all this. You know, they know who we are, and I believe that the powers that be know the story. I believe that the Illuminati or whatever demonic forces are running this show know who you are. But I promise you, my people don't know who you are. And I've always known that, but my word doesn't mean anything. How can I prove it? Well, I know because I talk to them and I know they don't know. But I was speaking to Isaiah Yasharallah, and double honors to Isaiah because I don't think I've ever known anyone to know the Bible, the Apocrypha, and all of the readings and things like he does. I mean, you tell him you stump your toe, and he'll tell you what verse to go and read about it. And so I was speaking to him about how I believed, I don't know that I'm Esau, but, and this is going to sound weird to you guys, but I mean, if you can't be the light of the world, then maybe being the brother of the light of the world would be cool, being from that tribe, even though I mean, I'm obviously a descendant of the oppressors. I don't think my people owned slaves. We did not have any generational wealth. Hallelujah. But I mean, I come from people that flew the Confederate flag, and I make no, I fought against the Confederate flag. It flew on the State House in Columbia for, most of my life. It was on top of the State House, and we got it moved to a flag in the front. And I remember one of the most amazing things I ever saw. My son had to go to a doctor's appointment, and I got lost, made a wrong turn, and I ended up in front of the State House. And this little black guy was on the top of a ladder burning the Confederate flag down, and my son was in the back seat jumping up and down. And I was like, "That's a hero!" That was a cool moment. My son is 30 years old; he still remembers this guy. The guy passed away in 2005, but anyway, it was neat to see. But yeah, so my family, I know who my people are. And my people will tell you in a heartbeat they're not racist. And really and truly, we do have a lot of black people in our lives. One of those things where you're okay once you prove it, kind of thing. I don't know how to. My brother coaches a lot of young black females basketball, and they've been very successful. And I'm really glad for him that he's had that experience and then that contact. And here's Mashayahu woke up in 2016. But anyway, I wanted to convince you guys using the word that people don't know. People do not know. So listen to this. This is Wisdom of Solomon. This is the Apocrypha. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5. Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him and made no account for his labors. So the righteous man is going to stand boldly. Okay, let me read this real quick. The righteous man is going to stand boldly, and he's going to be standing boldly in front of his oppressor that gives him no credit for his labors. And then they're going to see this, and they're going to be troubled, and they're going to tremble with fear, and they're going to be amazed because they did not know. They're going to say, repenting and groaning for anguish of spirit, shall say within themselves, this was whom we had sometimes in derision. This is who we mocked. And a proverb and a reproach. These are the people that we treated with reproach, and they are the light of the world. That is, y'all check that out. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 1. Okay, so we're going to answer some questions. Let's go. Yeah, I'm ready. For 100 years, 1619 to 2019, COVID was the maker watershed moment. Oh, I hadn't even associated that with the fact that we came out of 400 years and went right into COVID. Yeah, and that was a major experience for me. I worked for the Department of Defense during that time. Who chose you, sister? He chose you, sister. Oh my goodness, thank you, dear. Thank you. You were called a child of Yah. Thank you, Danielle. Um, I don't know what I don't know what amazes me more, the black people that are so hateful or the ones that are so loving. You do know slavery happened in the Caribbean and other countries. Yes, I do. America was one of the last countries to start slavery. I do know that. I didn't know we were one of the last. I just have been so overwhelmed with what we did here till I never really looked at other countries and their slave movements. I have heard that they weren't as bad as what it was here. But you guys, did y'all catch in the, I don't know if everybody reads the Torah portions along with schedule, but the Torah portion about 2 weeks ago was about the Pharaoh was afraid that the Israelites were going to take over, and so he made the commandment to have the firstborn killed, and they killed them by throwing them into the Nile, not because they weren't going to drown. They were feeding them the alligators. And when I read that and I understood what was happening there, if that is not a biblical finger going, Mystery Babylon, if, where did they do that at? Okay, well, they did that with the Israelites when they were captive in Egypt, and they did it with the Israelites when they were captive here. That just makes my blood freeze a little bit. I find that kind of stuff overwhelming. Yes. And I know that there are, don't forget about Ethiopia, Sheba, etc. I have so much to learn. John Cooper, I have so much to learn. I kind of dropped the ball in 2019. I don't know how I did that. Like, how do you get the answer to prayer from the Most High and know that and I was on fire with it. I was good with it. I was like, oh my God, Jews here. This is the chosen. These are the light of the world. But then you go through that whole battle because the Bible makes it clear that there's going to be a lot of destruction and a lot of people have told me in the last 3 months that, I'm dead, I'm doomed, I'm done. And I reject that biblically because, and I'm waiting on Priest Lakata to tell me I need to be quiet, but I feel like curses were covenantal. They were the people that had the blessings had the curses. And, my ancestors created their own curses. They lived captive to, all kinds of nastiness, like the hate of white supremacy eats the soul, and if you don't understand that kind of captivity, I think we see it in Egypt when the queen is so captive to her lust that she completely shows her butt and tries to get Joseph to lay down with her, and when he won't, she accuses him, and here's Joseph in slavery and still free to do the right thing, and here she is free but captive. And so my people have died in captivity. When did you get your wake-up call? I got it in 2019, and I did not make enough noise about it. And I am trying to make up for that now. Doing these videos has really given me the boldness to stand on what I believe. And, I've been unapologetically anti-racist my entire life, but this is not something that I settled into into a household that was an Israelite household. And I didn't think I had salvation for 5 years. And I just really got into a pit of despair, to tell you the truth. And so I'm just waking up again. 2019 is when I knew who Judah was. And I my Bible knowledge is a little more than normal since I left the church and was studying, but it's still not that great. The Bible's just so incredible. Y'all's book is amazing, and I'm in awe of these people that come out when doctrines change, like what would happen with the Gentile salvation. It amazes me that people actually think that you're supposed to stick to everything that you learned. You should have revelation every time you open the book. So I did get my wake-up call in 2019, but I didn't do anything with it. I was thankful to know and thankful for truth and was honored to know the truth. But I agree that I agree. It's so beautiful to see some people are waking up. It is. It's also very alarming to see how many are not. And we know the path is narrow, and we know that it doesn't get wide in the end. But I do believe that I believe we're supposed to be making the kind of noise that we're making with this channel. And I believe that more people are going to wake up. And I want you guys to know, even the debates about Gentile salvation, all of that stuff, it's all for Israel. Everything that we're doing right now should be for Israel. I hope that Gentiles catch on. I hope that they hear it. I hope that they wake up. Nobody taught me. I dug for truth. So I hope that everybody does that. But everything that we're doing right now, what you guys are trying to work out, is for Israel. Yes, Jay, Mike, Willingham, fallacy. You're being nice. The Christian church is a fallacy. You are being nice. The Christian church, I don't know if I'm brave enough to say what I think, but I definitely think that JC is he's the opposite of the Messiah. The Messiah was, kept Saturday Sabbath or the seventh day Sabbath. I know there's some debates going on in Israel amongst you guys, about the Sabbath. But anyway, the Messiah kept the Sabbath in the book, and the JC keeps the pagan Sabbath. And the Messiah read Torah, and JC doesn't read the Torah and teaches against the law. So really, I think that the Christian church is, what tribe am I from? I don't know. I don't know. I've been taught that I'm an Edomite. I don't know. But I am clinging to, I claim that I am cleaving to Judah, because that's who's here, and that's who I know about. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what tribe I'm from. I assume I'm a Gentile. I've kind of yeah, and so one of the things that I've done since I got my wake up call. So one of the actual thing that I knew was Black people are Judah and they're hurting. That is what I knew in 2019, and I have since then, done everything that I can to minister, and I always did before with my students and stuff. But I took a job in a more of a clinic situation so that I can work with women that are I work with women that are potentially have breast cancer or have breast cancer, have been determined to have breast cancer, and a lot of them are thankfully Israelites, and I am able to minister to them. And once they find out that I'm doing it, I'll probably get fired. But the other Gentile that I know, the righteous Gentile that was sent to me by Christopher, just got fired for teaching about the chosen in Hungary. She's in Hungary. But I'm just so amazed at how things work with the word. And it's hard to see. It's hard to see a lot of Israel, suffering under curses still. Like the curses, I think, have been lifted, right? The curses are over. And I don't know that they're over. If they were over, Sonia Massey wouldn't have gotten shot in the face, and Robert Brooks wouldn't have died in New York. And I don't know. But to see Judah here and hurting so bad is painful for me. One of the things that happened for me in 2019, and then because I was keeping Torah, and I was keeping the Sabbath, and I was trying to do the feast, and it was amazing to me to watch the camps grow and see the videos and see these huge masses of people now coming to the table to keep the Sabbath. And I always imagined Aviyah, like what it must be like to see that happening. And then the revelation, looking at Priest Akai and looking at the people that, my friend Isaiah, people that have children that are being raised in the truth, sons that are actually starting out with eighth day circumcision, and daughters that are, learning their value and learning how to, their roles, and being raised up in Torah. I really am amazed that is, that we're getting ready to come into a generation of Israelites. And I've met some that were raised in the truth, and I'm not trying to say that some of y'all weren't raised in the truth, but I just think we're coming into a large number of babies right now that are, in 25 years going to be something. I think it's, that they're going to have that impact. um, of having grown up in Torah. But I have a servant's heart. It is my heart to serve. And one of the things I wanted to say, another thing people say, what made me tell the truth? I just got the opportunity. So when I call him Deacon because I watched him for years, but when Priest Sakai and Assad came out with Gentile salvation, I reached out to them and I'm like, okay, can I join the camp now? And of course they said no, they weren't ready for that. But they offered to like help me learn and stuff, like if I had questions I could message them, and they were very kind about it. And I understand the whole to the Jew first. And I just kind of followed along and watched everything and watched all the debates and watched all the hits they were taking. And I don't know, we just kind of kept in touch through Messenger. And then when he made the new TGC, he offered me he asked if I wanted to do some volunteer work. And I'm so glad, Darrell Sellers, that you asked that question, because one of the things I wanted to make sure that I pointed out to you guys, I want everybody to know, because in every video, somebody has said, made the accusation or put the belief out there that I have somehow stole Hebrew content and am like monetizing it. I have no gain from this. I wouldn't take any gain from this. And if I did, it would go right to the ministry. You guys, please like, share, do the super chats, and I definitely think we're supposed to be making this noise, and I'm honored to be a part of it. But at no point would I ever take any money for these videos. The priest does all of the pictures and stuff. I just read and do my part, and then he does the videos belong to TGC. They don't belong to me. I'm not trying to steal any Hebrew content. I mean, I do consider the Bible the world's, it's y'all's book, but yes, the main thing is that we need to draw to the Most High. Absolutely, absolutely, and that is and for me as well. But I think the main thing is that the light of the world needs to really be supported and getting into, what their role. That's where we're going to have peace in the land. That's when we're going to have peace in the land. And that's the plan. That's what's going to happen. But absolutely, this has made me so close to the Most High. I am so grateful. I fear him. And that's not something you're taught in the Christian church. I do fear him, and we're told that fear of the Most High is the beginning of wisdom. We're also told, and I am a living testament, that wisdom brings pain, and this is a painful walk, and it's a narrow path. And that's the thing we need to be teaching people. If you're doing stuff and you're doing it with a whole bunch of people, you might need to be staying home. I was taught many people that are his will be destroyed due to pride, and because they left God and served other gods, and many Gentiles will be saved. So Trina Bolden, I definitely believe that this is a possibility, and that is one of the things that, I saw a meme on Facebook that said, imagine being chosen and not getting picked. And that is a tragedy, because that is not the will of the Most High. His will is to gather his people up. And he called them his firstborn, his inheritance. And, you don't go back on that. You don't go back on that. You don't go back on a firstborn. You don't go back on any children. But your firstborn, your inheritance, the apple of your eye, will always be that. There's no replacement for those people. You can't replace those people. So I forgot what that comment was, but it really ran true to me. And absolutely, we all need to be drawn closer to God, but in doing the right thing, in my position, it has drawn me closer to God. I can't tell you the last time I have bowed my head and just said, Abba Yah, I love you. And my prayer is, Abba Yah, Hineni, every day. Father God, I am here. Okay. All right. So we're going to wrap it up in about 10 minutes. If there are any other questions, I did have a couple of things. Mystery Babylon. This was a comment. There's so many comments I want to mention and talk about, but I can't get to all of them. And I'm so blessed by that, guys. Mystery Babylon cannot be America. Revelation defines it as, in her was the blood of the prophets. So, I would I think that the prophets of the Israelites and the blood of the Israelites are here. That is my whole, and one of the things, I don't know where it is, but in the word it says life is in the blood. Life is in the blood. And about the slave market too. So blood on the ground, yes, here in the US, blood on the ground. There's blood by the water where the babies were fed to alligators, and there's blood on the ground where dads had to be killed because their daughters were being sold in the slave market. But I wanted to explain to you guys that no, I'm not old enough to have been in the slave market. The slave market is a museum type place in Charleston, South Carolina, and they're all over. I think that they're not, it's not just there because people have actually mentioned them to me since I made that video. It used to be called Slave Market when I was young, and it's now they cleaned it up and they call it Market Street. But anyway, it's a place set up kind of like a very bougie, very nice upper, very nice market, like a flea market, but much nicer, with paintings and some famous artist and basket weaving. And right beside it is the actual auction house where they sold people and divided families. And so, I mean, I just imagine in those kinds of acts that there are there are people that aren't disobedient, and then they have to be handled. And I imagine blood on the ground right there. And that is, and life is in the blood. And that is blood that has not had justice. And I believe justice is coming. And it's not going to be pretty. And I don't know where I'll be. I don't know what'll happen. I don't know who he's going to have mercy on. But yes, to the person that said, there will be chosen that have hate in their heart. And I want to say this, and I want to say it, and I don't know if I should, but I'm going to say this. If the oppressor took your ancestors, if the oppressor sent you to prison unjustly, if you're coming out on parole and you've learned who you are and you're chosen, and you're pregnant, and your celebration is you find out you're chosen and you're excited about smashing baby heads, please check yourself. Please check yourself, because that kind of hate for the oppressor is what will keep you. They'll get your eternity too, if that is not walking in line. And I'm nobody to tell Israelites that they're not walking in line, but I know what that kind of hate does. I've lived on that side. Like, people think that whites won, and I just can't tell you how much they didn't. They're slaves to alcoholism, gambling, addiction, pedophilia. I mean, you haven't lived in captivity until you have a desire for your niece. I don't know how else to say it, but and I know that not all white people live like that. And I know that there are good white people that love the Lord. And, if they could get this information, they'd be okay with it. But I just don't know how we get there. I don't know how we get there. And so I don't know if we want to end. It has been the highlight of 2026 to be here. And thank you guys for the questions. I do have some more comments, but I'm going to wait to hear from Priest about when I'm going to keep going with the so that thing about that comment about Mystery Babylon, I really believe that the blood of the saints is here, and that's one of the reasons why. And not only that, the portion where they threw the boys, not all was it the males? They ordered all the males killed and threw them in the Nile. Not because they were going to drown, because they were feeding them alligators. I felt like that was such a biblical finger pointing us to the future Mystery Babylon, because, where do they do that at? I had some photos of comments. Okay, let me see if I can. And how or what does this have to do with your concern? So I kind of already touched on that. If Edom speaks the truth, it is still a lie. I just want to remind everybody that my ancestors did not have a covenant. The only people that have a covenant with the Most High is Jacob and the 12 tribes. And I suggest to you to consider that also means that my people did not have that did not have, my people did not have curses. They created their own curses, but there's no covenantal curses for Esau, if that's who we are. Um, and so, because I used to agree with you, I used to think if Israelites, if the light of the world, Black people that are living now had to suffer what their ancestors did, then it would only make sense that the oppressor is going to do the same. But the actual truth of the matter is, biblically speaking, those were covenantal curses that were activated by disobedience of the ancestors. I don't know how that works when there's no covenant for my people. And I don't know what's going to happen. All I can do is do what my heart tells me to do, my mind tells me to do, and that is be obedient to the Torah, recognize who the light of the world is, and help and serve in that area when I can, and teach my children about Torah and Sabbath, and hopefully one day get to do Passover before I die. I would love to do one calendar year of all the feasts before I leave this world. But anyway, and there's a few more, but I don't know what time we have. Why you telling? Do you know the end result? I don't know the end result. And how or what does this have to do? So that was another one. That was the same one, I think. So people were saying, I love this comment. The awakening is being accelerated now. The masses have begun to see and recognize the signs. I think that's true. I think people are seeing things. And I will say, I am proud to say, how we always say, we're not our ancestors, how you guys will say, we're not our ancestors. And that means, it's not going to be like you think it, like it was last time. I will say, I think white people are not their ancestors either. I'm kind of shocked to see what, is happening right now in our nation with white people that are actually getting out in the street and protesting. And they did that before the white people got killed too. And it was way late. I mean, the KKK still lives here. We're ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I understand all that, but it is nice to see, it's nice to see people standing up. And unfortunately, I don't see it here in the Carolinas where I live. I see a lot of closed eyes and heads turning and people saying, I'm not going to let that bother my peace. And I don't think that that's appropriate. And I think that when you are in a democracy, especially if you love the Lord and read the book, you're supposed to take care of minorities, and you're supposed to take care of democracy and justice. Okay. Unless Priest Akai wants to show me any other comments, I will say all praises to the Most High. Thank you, everyone, and shalom.